Today on the show, we have Dr. Janet Parish. She is a clinical professor. She is also the associate department head for the marketing department, which means she does a lot of work. She runs the show. No. She is also the director of the Reynolds and Reynolds Sales Leadership Institute. Welcome, Dr. Parish.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Yeah. How was your weekend?
Busy. I was in Wisconsin on Friday and Mississippi on Saturday.
Why? That was a weekend.
So on Friday, I went to Wisconsin to be with Eli as he was receiving his Outstanding Dean Award from the University Sales Center Alliance. So that was a very nice recognition for us and for him.
Absolutely.
And then I went to Mississippi. So I flew back into Houston Friday night. My family picked me up and we went to Mississippi to visit some friends and family.
And that's home,
Yes.
Mississippi?
Yes.
So tell me more about the award for Eli and what that meant.
Yeah, so this was a new award that the University Sales Center Alliance launched really to get more deans to think about supporting their sales program. So it was really kind of in a way, a self-serving kind of award that they created. Unfortunately, a lot of programs around the country are sort of fighting for resources, fighting for faculty lines, and so they really wanted to recognize the handful of deans that really are supporting sales programs. So they launched the award. We nominated Eli in the summer and found out about a month ago that he was the inaugural recipient of the award, which was so meaningful for him because he was one of the 5 or 6 at the table that created the University Sales Center Alliance in 2002.
Wow.
So it was, big deal for him, big deal for us. I told him it was the easiest nomination letter I've ever written.
Absolutely.
How can you deny that he has supported sales education, not just at A&M, but everywhere he's ever been. Personally, with funding, he and Fern have endowed a scholarship for our students, and certainly with his time. He and I co-taught a class last year, so he makes time for what is his true passion, and that's professional selling.
Sure. And he talked about that when he was on the show too, and so it certainly is a dean who aligns with that group and what they're trying to do. That's excellent. So what'd you do in Mississippi?
So we've visited Jeff's mother, my mother-in-law, for a few hours in the morning. She's aging, and we just try to see her when we can. And then met some friends that we hadn't seen in a long time at the Southern Miss football game.
Oh, cool.
And we had not seen them in quite some time. So it was really awesome to get to hang out with some friends for 20-year friends that we've known for a long time.
It's amazing to have those in our lives, for sure. What is your favorite superpower? We'll open with our typical icebreaker question.
I would like to have the ability, I don't know if this one has a name or not, but I would like to have the ability to stop time for everyone else once a week so that I can have 8 to 10 more hours.
Yes.
Some weeks I would sleep. Some weeks I would, lay by the pool. Most weeks I'd work 10 more hours. But I would like to have that ability.
Yeah. That does not surprise me about you, knowing how much you do for Maze and enjoy it. It's a tricky thing. Kyle's the same way. And when you get such a high from productivity, so much value, it happens to me, and there's nothing like being productive.
Yeah.
Ryan went to a concert this weekend that I would have liked to have gone to, but I was working on a project with my sister, and we were productive, and I thought, I don't know that I could match that high that I get from that with even going to a concert I would really enjoy. Which is, maybe that's sad, Janet. We need to work on that in life.
Yeah. We jokingly in our department call it work-life balance.
Work-life. You do have other things you like to do.
Yes.
What else do you like to do besides work?
So I spend a lot of time with my family. Our kids are 17, 22, and 24, but we still spend a lot of time together. Our kids' friends joke like, boy, y'all spend a lot of time together. We'll be, out at a restaurant, all of us, their friends will get on Instagram and go, God, you're with your family all the time. Like, that's a bad thing?
Right.
It's not a bad thing.
Right.
We spend a lot of time together, just as our immediate family, but and I'm a huge college football fan.
Yes. Been an interesting season.
Yeah.
So who's the teams you follow the most on college football?
A&M, obviously, Alabama. I went to Alabama,
So
SEC
it's been
in
pretty
general.
good. It's been pretty good for you the last
Well, Alabama's not having
year.
great.
So.
I mean, they're
Well,
winning, but they're
let's not complain, Janet. When you got the streak you got going on,
I'm not complaining, but I'll tell you, as a parent and teacher, I love that Alabama wins. Not just because I went to school there, but I love that the way Nick Saban coaches works.
Yeah.
I love that he tells them, do your job and don't worry about anything else, and everything takes care of itself. And so, as a football fan and Alabama alum, I love that Alabama wins, but that piece is big too. They focus on doing the right things all the time, and it works out. And, just as a non-football person, I still think that's a very valuable lesson for everybody to think about.
I think about college football and the coaches there, and the coaches that can consistently do something. And there's multiple factors in that, because Nick Saban is good because he's a good coach, but he's also good because he was a good coach one time, which made recruiting a lot easier going forward. So there's that factor. But I think about coaching and leadership in a business context in parallel, that he can continually recreate something. And there's a few of them, not that many, that can continually recreate that are so intentional, that have a little something that everybody else doesn't have. And I really badly want that as a leader, and I don't know that you can put your finger on it, or if you can, I don't know what it is. And
that's the unique thing about Saban is, everybody talks about his process. And so not only does he recruits well, but he also loses players early.
Absolutely.
And he also loses coaches
right.
all the time, because people are trying to hire the process.
Yeah.
But he's still undefeated against all his former assistant coaches.
Right.
So he's clearly got something special. It certainly doesn't hurt to have the resources he has at a school like Alabama. It doesn't hurt that they have the legacy they have. But he's doing a lot of things right, more than just coaching the players. He's running a machine that involves recruiting the right coaches, recruiting the right players, supporting everyone. He's just doing a lot of things well that you're right, business can learn from as well.
And there's a lot of schools with that many resources. I think we're the highest revenue. A&M is the highest.
Right.
I don't know if you call it revenue, highest revenue generating athletic department in the nation. So we're not lacking for resources.
Right.
But that's a tough thing to recreate.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, happens in NFL too. Belichick, he's got that thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
that's probably where Saban got it.
Well, that's true. It's like in Ph.Ds where you have your grandparents that are your advisor, and then their advisor, and you've got that legacy going. They've got that in coaching for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Give us 60 seconds on your road to Mays.
I might need 120.
You can have really any amount of minutes you want.
Yeah, so I was one of those people who it took me a long time to learn not to say never.
Yeah, that's a good one. God really likes to laugh at that joke.
Yeah. And I was slow on that one, because I said I would never get a Ph.D. or I'd never teach. Mm-hmm. So when I was in high school, I wanted to major in psychology. But I thought, what in the world do you do with an undergraduate degree in psychology? And I'm not getting a Ph.D., right? And so I looked at my parents. My mother was a nurse. My father was an accountant. Nursing is a profession that I did not hear the call for.
Or accounting. Yeah. We've talked about that a lot.
Well, I did go accounting. I started off accounting.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because I don't think even today that we do a good enough job of letting people know the range of career options there are, or how to match your personality and skill set to those.
Especially not at 18 years old.
Right. So at that point, I don't want to be a nurse, so I'll be an accountant, because I don't know what else there is out there. So I went to a community college that I loved. Would have gone to school there all 4 years if they'd let me. I lived on the campus. I was in everything: band, show choir, PR team.
You were the queen of the community
loved
college.
Well, everybody was. Everybody. Everybody was that involved. It was just awesome. And so I did accounting, and then I transferred to the University of Southern Mississippi where I finished, and I took intermediate and cost the same semester.
Yeah.
Okay. I made a 67. Not that that scarred me,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I
yeah,
made
yeah.
a
You
60.
have not held a grudge
I
at
have
all. Yeah.
not held on to that at all, but I made a 67 on the first cost test, which was the second highest grade in the class. And I'm just going to be honest, I had never worked that
my.
hard for a 67 in all of my life, before or since. And so I thought, we might ought to just drop cost accounting and stay in intermediate, which I did. And I made a B in intermediate, but hated it.
Yeah.
And so just like here, I was in that semester where you take marketing and management and accounting, all
Sure.
that. And so in marketing, while I was hating accounting, I went, oh my, this is very psychology based. Okay. So I ended up finishing at Southern Miss with a marketing degree. And my first job was in healthcare marketing, which I loved. I tell my students all the time, if I ever had to have a real job again, because being a professor is not a real job, that it would be
Don't tell anybody.
Okay,
But,
yeah, that it would be in healthcare marketing. I loved feeling like I was helping people without actually helping the people.
Because you weren't the caregiver.
I wasn't a caregiver,
Sure.
but I was working in a helping industry, and that felt great. I loved it. I loved the variety in the task, because my 3 criteria for a job has always been, and today, I want to use my education, I want to work with a lot of different people, and I want variety in the task. I do not want to do the same thing 8 hours a day, every day. So that job, I would literally be doing a needs assessment one day to determine if we need to hire a certain kind of physician, and be blowing up balloons for a doctor's day party the next day. Loved it. Go in the helicopter on photo shoots with the photographer. Yeah, I mean, just loved it. My boss didn't love me. And it was very interesting because she was very experienced. She had come through the ranks, nursing, nurse manager, created their education department. When they created a marketing department, they made her director of marketing. Very good at her job. But she just was a little annoyed that I had a marketing degree.
Because she had not had that background.
She had not had formal training in marketing. And even though I really only had a vocabulary lesson, because remember I said I'd never teach? I said I'll never teach, but if I do, my students are going to know how to do something when they walk out of the classroom. So I graduated with an undergraduate degree that was really a vocabulary lesson. So when I was asked to do a needs assessment, the first thing I did was get on the phone and say, Dr. Smith, how do you do a needs assessment? And so I worked at the hospital for 2 years, and then I went back and got an MBA. And doing the MBA is when I learned that—
And that was at Alabama?
No, that was still at Southern Miss.
Okay.
And that was when I learned that it's projects that make you learn, or at least made me learn. Yeah. It was the application of the material that really—
Which we know from Bloom's taxonomy and everything else that we do. Yes. Absolutely.
But, a few years ago when I was in college—
you didn't have that.
We didn't know as much about that kind of stuff, right? So I told you this is going to be longer than 60 seconds. Okay. So I got an MBA, and then I started work at a bank as a training coordinator. Also loved that job. I was teaching some classes. I was scheduling classes. I was helping other people learn to teach. Starting to look a little like my current job. But what I didn't like about it was the rigidity of the schedule. The joke about banker's hours— that's not a real thing. It might have been when the bank was open, but that's not when the work happened. So I literally couldn't work through lunch and leave at 4 if my daughter had a doctor's appointment or something like that. Yeah. And so that was really starting to weigh on me with a young family. I had both my daughters when I was working at the bank. And so kind of this light bulb went off over my head that I'm actually teaching. Remember how I said I was never going to do that? Wow, I'm actually teaching. Teaching adults is quite different than— And so I started teaching adjunct at a private college, teaching application software, if you can believe that. But it was during that time that I realized, teaching's okay. Maybe this is it. So I had my my second daughter and started really thinking about and and praying about what the next step was. And so there was a high school 3 to 5 minutes from my house, and my best friend, literally best friend since kindergarten, was teaching the business classes, and she was resigning. So I thought, okay, I know her, love her, but I'm more qualified for this job than she is because I had an MBA and she didn't. So I'll go apply for that job. Applied for the job, didn't get it. Okay. All right, God, I thought it was teaching, maybe not. Okay, so then the community college, remember the community college I loved? They had a job to teach management marketing. Oh, this is perfect. I can drive right by my parents' house, drop off my children, go teach my classes, come back. This will be perfect. Didn't get the job. So then the college I've been teaching adjunct at said, well, we can't hire you full time, but what if they were on the quarter system? What if we, could you do 2 courses a quarter? Would that be enough? Get a calculator out. Yeah, I could survive on that. And they were like, we can't do it. So now I'm starting to panic because I've high school, junior college, 4-year college. I'm thinking, really? Kindergarten? Really? Is this what's happening? So I go back to the bank after maternity leave. Literally first day back at work, my phone rings, and Dr. Bill Smith, remember Dr. Smith that I called about the needs assessment, called and said, I have a job for you for 9 months at Southern if you want it. And I said yes, and then said, what is the job? What does it pay? What would I be doing? And so I went and I taught there for 9 months. While I was doing that, I applied to Alabama. I did not apply anywhere else. My whole plan was to go to Alabama, go back to Southern Miss, and that's where I was going to live the rest of my life because all my family was within 30 minutes. And so I had no plans to ever leave. I got in at Alabama. Did not have a plan B, literally did not apply anywhere else. I went to Alabama and I studied with Rob Morgan. So Rob Morgan, he has the most frequently cited paper in all of business and economics for a 20-year period on relationship marketing. So I was able to study with Rob for 4 years. So right before my 4th year, I met Lynn Berry, who coined the term relationship marketing. And so Lynn said, who are you working with at Alabama? I said, Rob Morgan. He said, A&M's hiring this year. He said, if you'll send me your stuff, I'll make sure you get an interview. So I go flying out of the building and I call Rob. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. Lynn Berry just told me that he'd make sure I got an interview. And Rob got his Ph.D. at Texas Tech. And he said, Janet, there was a time in my life I would have given anything for an interview at Texas A&M. And so finished out the conference and interviewed here, and the rest is history. So I literally came here to work with the man who coined the term relationship marketing because that's what I spent my first part of my academic career studying. And so people ask me why I'm at A&M. It's because of Lynn Berry.
We've had Lynn on the show, and we've had mutual discussions about Lynn, and he's obviously brilliant and turned out to be a good choice.
Yeah, brilliant and passionate and
kind, caring.
Yeah, all the characteristics you want in a mentor.
Mm-hmm. You and I've taught accounting. Mm-hmm. I'm teaching less accounting right now, but I teach accounting. You teach marketing. Mm-hmm. We have students who come to be an accountant sometimes and don't love it. And I started as a marketing major and became an accountant. So we move across majors within Mays. You don't have to choose a major. You come into Mays Business School, you don't have to choose a major until you're a junior.
Right.
But you know what those students are experiencing. And you took intermediate accounting, and I didn't even know that. Yes. And this is probably our most frequent conversation when we're together.
Well, it's interesting because I speak in the large 321 class, the intro to marketing class every year, and I go in and talk to them. And sort of the goal of my conversation is for them to know a little bit about the Department of Marketing, but to really get them thinking about how they're going to build a resume with their time that they have left. And so I talk to them about the opportunities that marketing majors have, and I tell them if you're in marketing, you need to think about these things. If you're not in marketing, maybe some of the things we do in marketing can be your differentiator. And if you're not interested in anything, you need to be thinking about what your own department's doing or what are the others. And so, I walk through the marketing curriculum and I tell them my story of how I started off thinking I was going to do psychology. And then And I also tell them that I started off at a junior college. And this year, I had about 15 students come up to me after class thanking me for telling my story. Some of them were junior college transfers and said, this gives me hope that I'll make it here. Some of them changed their major or were thinking about changing their major. And, we're glad to know that was okay to do. So, it's about, marketing is about fitting the right people to the right products and services. So what we do in education is about fitting students to the right degree. When I first started teaching, I'm like, this isn't like curing cancer. And this isn't, but what we do matters. We help students find their way. And it's, the right job, 50-year career, right? Most people work 50 years. And so the right career path has a whole lot to do with their just life success, however they define it. Being in a job where you can do work that you feel like matters, however you define that, where you feel like you can be successful. My son's been struggling with a lot of issues for the past couple of years, and he told his pediatrician that he, viewed me as successful and didn't want to disappoint me. And I told him, I said, let me tell you, I said, I am successful, but let me tell you why. It has nothing to do with my title, my degrees. It has everything to do with the fact that I love my job. And so you get to decide what job you love. And so, what we do here, helping students find something they can do that's meaningful to them, that puts them on a path where they can truly be happy in life. And work is a big part of our lives. And so to be able to do work that you can be proud of, that you can be happy doing, I tell students all the time, the best gift you can give yourself is for Sunday night not to dread Monday morning. That's the best gift you can give yourself.
Why we put the podcast on Monday morning. I was driving from Houston last night around midnight thinking, tomorrow's going to be really early. And then I was like, I don't even mind. I get to go talk to Janet on the podcast. It's going to be a good day. So I do think that we have an interesting perspective. I think we should do parent coaching on helping your kids find their passion, because it is easy, I think, as a parent who's not in the higher education system especially, to have an idea of what will make their child successful or what will give their child a stable career and income. And as a parent, that feels comfortable. It feels like, oh, my child's going to be safe if they become an X because a doctor, an accountant.
There's always going to be a job.
Even. Yeah. There's always going to be a job. It's always going to be safe. And we've seen so many students do something because their parents, who oftentimes here are paying for their education, want them to do it. And I see the life getting sucked out of them.
I've had students in my office crying because their parents were forcing them to major in something specific. And it's even bigger than that. We've got to somehow, I'll get on a soapbox about this.
Go for it.
We have got to fix our education system. We have got to stop assuming that all kids need a 4-year degree. We've got to get past this, that trade school is bad. We've got to get past this, that all kids need to be mainstreamed. There are kids, for whatever reason, that should not be at Texas A&M. They should be at a smaller school where they'll thrive. And parents who are Aggies sometimes don't get that. Parents who have college education sometimes don't get that that's not the right path for everyone. And it's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's what's right for the kid. And we've got to figure that out. I wish someone in the National Board of Education would make a list that says, for every course we teach K through 12, here's 5 life reasons you need this course, and here's 5 careers this might apply to. We toured ExxonMobil about 2.5 years ago, and we went in their research center. I felt so important. They told us only 10% of their employees have ever been in this place. So I felt very important. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I felt very important.
You are. I don't know what you were looking at either, but you are important.
We were on this one floor that everybody was walking around in white lab coats. They looked very professional. They all had undergraduate degrees in geology, and their job was to operate all of this equipment to break rocks. Why do they not tell middle school boys this is a job?
Yeah.
Why do they not do that?
And girls.
And girls. Well, okay. So I had a middle school boy at the time, so I was hyper focused on that. But why do they not tell people that? Right. Why do they not? Why are we not doing a better job of our education system of putting kids where they're going to be more successful and making sure they know about the jobs?
And if your parents are not a geologist, how do you know that geology exists? Unless you happen to take Geology 101 your freshman year and go, oh, no, this is cool. How do you know?
And we've also made it really hard for people to change majors.
Yeah, we have.
We get people in the business school, and there's only a handful that probably shouldn't be here, that should be doing something else. But we've made it so hard to get in, they're not going to leave.
Right.
If they do find something else they love.
Well, and even I have two cousins. I have one cousin who came to A&M no matter what she had to do to get in. She went to Blinn and then came to A&M and picked a major that maybe wasn't her top choice, but what she could get into. I have another cousin who got into A&M in a major he didn't want to major in. He wanted to be mechanical engineering, and he was not going to be able to do that at Texas A&M. He was not the best student. He got into A&M in a major he didn't want to do after working really hard at Blinn, because he didn't get here right out of high school. And he said, I'm not going there. He went to A&M Corpus Christi and majored in mechanical engineering. And, his parents didn't go to college. And so my mom and I were talking to him a lot about it and trying to kind of give him advice and thinking through it. And I didn't know if that was a good choice or not. And it was the best choice. He just recently graduated. He's doing a job he loves, making a six-figure income right out of school. And honestly, it's because he can fix things. He knows how to repair a car because that's what his dad taught him how to do. And I thought, oh, he's really dead set on this goal, but I don't know if it would be better to go to A&M that has the brand and the reputation, or if it would be better to go somewhere else where you can get the major. And I thought it was a brave move. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a brave move even.
Yeah.
You and I have talked a lot about junior college transfer students and students who come in with a lot of AP hours. And for a lot of students, that works great. It is completely fine. But for some students, that is a really tough transition. It was a transition you made well. Kyle made that transition well. But it is hard. What advice do you have for parents with kids in that situation, for students in that situation, where they're transferring to, and I think maybe we can pinpoint first why it's hard. And I have some perspectives. I think the competition in a junior college classroom is different than the competition at Mays. It's just, you might be the best student there. You are certainly the best student in those classes if you're making it into A&M as a transfer student. But the competition is different. Maybe the expectations are a little bit different, and it's hard to adjust to those when you come here.
Yeah, I think the time pressures here are tough too. We kind of screw kids up while they're in college. When they're in high school, their schedules are pretty tight. They're in class 35 hours a week. They do their extracurriculars. They do their homework, and then whatever time left for social. But they're very structured. And then we get them in college, and they study and take a nap and go to class and take another nap. And, so they're literally living in a 24-hour day instead of a, compartmentalized day. And I think they lose some time doing that. And so I think there's a lot of inefficiencies gained. And in most community colleges, you can get by with that. And then I think when you get here, the added pressure of, because we put a lot of pressure on students to do things outside the classroom. Right. And I've been saying for 5 years or longer that we've reached a point where their classes are getting in the way of all their cool stuff they're doing. And we've got to reclaim some of that. And I think our classes are getting better and better, but we haven't, which means in some ways harder and harder, but we haven't relaxed some of that pressure to do so much stuff outside of the classroom. And I think we have to think about that. I actually spoke to a group of MSC committee chairs last week and talked to them about market segmentation and how they choose, who they're serving and make sure they're adding value. And one of the things I caution them against is to not keep doing stuff for the same people. We end up having, groups of students who are taxed to do the same things over and over again. Even in our own college, we have 3 key programs that have about 80% overlap of students. And we've got to quit doing that. We've got to start spreading out more, quit putting so much pressure on the top performers. I mean, we know what happens in real life too. But so I think part of it is we've got to do the right things in our lower level courses so that when students transfer in, they're not behind.
Yep.
Because that's just not fair.
Oh.
So we've got to reorient those lower level classes to be what everyone would have. And then I think somehow we've got to reclaim that their education space rather than their co-curricular space is really the more important thing. And I want to be careful about that because it's not the transcript that gets them a job. It's the resume that gets them a job.
Sure.
But we've got to have some balance there.
I do feel some compassion for kids today. I had a friend who asked me, she has a 4-year-old. So she asked me, should I let my child take AP classes in high school? And I was like, well, let's talk in 10 years. But it's a question I think about often because I see kids come into high school after taking a ton of AP classes. And again, not all of them because some of them it works for. But I see a lot of kids come in to college after taking a lot of AP classes. And one, they don't have the benefit of taking freshman English and history where you just get to practice being a college student a little bit, right? I mean, those classes warm you up for the harder classes. And if you skip all of them, there's some benefits to that. And I think as a state, we've tried to really support community colleges in a positive way because it saves money. Getting credit as a high school student speeds up that 4-year process that we're very concerned about time to graduation. And because we don't want to be a state that has college graduates with an extensive amount of debt, and we want people to be able to get out into the workforce. But I do worry about that. And what I ended up telling her, for parents out there, what I ended up telling her was, you should let your child do whatever they can do without being maxed out. Because I can't tell you, your child may be brilliant and AP classes are going to be easy and they should take every one of them because why not? But if taking AP classes is brutal for your child, is really grinding them and they're going to come into A&M burned out and then fizzle out, then no. And knowing that maybe not taking AP classes means not getting into A&M at this point, at where we are today. I did not take AP classes and got into A&M, but that probably honestly would not work now. And so I'm really torn on that piece of advice because I want your child to get into an excellent school, or there are schools out there better than A&M. I think they're called Ivy League schools, but there are schools where the competition is so hard, but your kid can't do more than what they can do.
It's a fine balance between keeping your kid challenged,
yes,
because you don't want them to be bored either, because boredom is a problem,
and you don't want them to underperform their capabilities.
Exactly, and so it's how do you push them? But there's also this problem of how intense the extracurriculars are in high schools now. Kids getting up at 6:30 in the morning and going to band practice, and they can hardly play more than one sport now because everything's so intense, and so I think we, as a society, we have to somehow back off a little bit, on kids in general. But then, why are we rushing everything? Why are we rushing kids to do everything? Why do they not still have recess and nap time and art? And you know what I mean? I just feel like we're rushing everything, and society's pushing all that. I mean, the recruiters are pushing. They want students to make a decision when they're sophomores about where they're going to work. And, so the whole world is just moving kids too fast. And if you think about the period from 18 to 25 as such a critical period, in somebody's life when they're first kind of stretching their wings and, figuring out who they are and, making decisions without parents. And we have this period where they're making all these big decisions And it's weird. At 18, you can serve our country, but you can't rent a hotel room. I mean, this is a weird period of life. And I think we're putting a lot of pressure on kids and not necessarily supporting everybody. We've got to, as a society, recognize these new levels of anxiety that kids have. The mental health issues that our country's facing, the drug issues our country's facing. There's just a lot of things going on that are really impacting this age group in a negative way. And I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to slow it down.
Yeah. My sister and I were having this conversation this weekend because it is an arms race. And that's the part where it's hard to tell a parent, pump the brake a little. Because I also know pumping the brake, or I think the parent is concerned pumping the brake might mean my child doesn't have an opportunity later in life that they might want to have, or I want them to have, or you want your kids to be successful and happy. And it's hard to say, I have a niece who plays volleyball and she loves volleyball. You can't just play volleyball anymore. You got to play volleyball all year round on 2 club teams, and you got to be on the best one or you don't get looked at for this. And the likelihood, I don't know, the likelihood of her playing in college is slim, not because she's not good. She is very good, but because the likelihood of anyone playing in college is slim. And even then, is that the goal? Should any child, not her, but should any child be put through this really rigorous training program, whatever it is, academic, athletic training program, with hopes of what? Of a college degree? My mom, one time I played club volleyball for a little bit, and we were at a tournament, and this other mom, my mom was not a stage mom, volleyball mom. She was like, all right, let's go to this thing and like, whatever, have fun, I guess. I don't know. But there was another mom who was that mom. She had taught her kid to play volleyball from a very young age, and she was the coach from the sideline, and she coached her in the car, and my mom said, so what's the end goal? And she said, well, I want her to play in college. I want her to have a scholarship so that we don't have to pay for college. Mom said, you paid for college about twice with this club stuff and the amount that you're traveling and the training and the coaches. And I thought, man, that's such a good, my mom has good perspectives.
Yeah.
No, that's such a good perspective because the likelihood of getting the scholarship is almost none. I mean, first of all, you got to have some physical characteristics that are genetic, like height, and you've got to not get injured, and you have to have put in a ton of time and effort and just have some natural ability.
Mm-hmm.
And it's threading the eye of a needle. And yet, is that the goal, or could we back off a little?
Yeah, and I'd like to know what percentage of kids start at 4 and burn out.
Well,
before it even matters.
The only statistic I've heard is that no Major League Baseball players played select ball before the age of 12 or something like that. And I think there's some burnout, physical and mental burnout. And there is some research from an athletics perspective specifically that diversifying as a young kid, not playing one sport, is very important to your athletic ability later on. And I can imagine that applies to a lot of things in life, that getting to see many different things and do many different things is important.
Well, it's a well-rounded perspective, but it's also better for your body to use different muscles for different sports. And I mean, when we were growing up, everybody, I went to such a small high school, everybody did everything. So the football players, they got in trouble if they went into playoffs because it overlapped with basketball season, and all the football players were also the basketball players.
You got nobody on the bench.
And then the same thing rolling into baseball season. But we've pushed too far on some of these things.
Well, and your brain's a muscle too, so being able to exercise that in multiple different contexts is important. And I think what you said about application is so important too. If I could give my kids anything, it would be more projects, more practice, less homework and textbooks, and more of that.
Yeah.
And that is what I think leads to success here. You talked about your job in healthcare marketing and how your boss didn't like you. Were you fired from from that job?
No.
Oh.
I tried to transfer out, and she kept blocking me.
So she wanted you to stay.
I think she just wanted me to leave the hospital. I don't think
Oh.
she wanted me to be successful anywhere in the hospital. And so I tried to transfer. We had a women's resource center, so I tried to transfer there, and she blocked me. And she even, I right after my MBA, I applied for a job at an ad agency, and I actually got the job, but it was the ad agency that I worked with when I was at the hospital. And a friend heard her. They did a reference check and called her. And a friend of mine overheard the call and called me and said, she just bashed you. And so I was glad I knew that at least. So then when I went for my interview, I interviewed with the president of the company. And he said, well, what's it like working for her? And I said, well, she has very high standards. She can be very demanding. And he said, we know how she is. Don't worry about it.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, then. So I ended up getting that job. I only worked there for a short period of time because they ended up closing an office and I didn't want to move. And then they went to the bank from there. So that was an interesting period, and at first I was like, I want to do something about this,
Yeah.
but it was, I mean, I understand why. I mean, it seems very petty even now to look back at that, but a learning lesson.
Sure. Jeff Miller, from the president and CEO of Halliburton, came and talked to our students probably a couple of years ago, and someone asked him what's the best business advice you could get us, and he said, never leave a job because of a bad boss. And I don't know why. I have never had a bad boss, and I don't know why in that moment I thought that is important information for me to remember, because it was not applicable to my life. But I thought that's important to remember, because I do see people that say, oh, my boss is just terrible. And, and I think you can miss opportunities that way. But having a bad boss, I mean, you're at work more than you're at home, and that can be miserable.
And I can see why he would make that suggestion. And I think it's very valid to think about that. I don't know that I would have left if I was not already thinking about an MBA. I probably would have stuck it out if I didn't kind of already have a plan B in mind. Because when I was in my undergraduate, I went ahead and took the GMAT. I knew I'd get an MBA at some point. And so I sort of felt like it was more of a timing thing.
Sure. And I didn't mean to imply
No. No, I think it's great advice and a great thing to think about. And I viewed it, because I've had a variety of different kind of bosses over time. Yes. And so I do think that is great advice to really think about, why you're making a change, and not let it be because of a person. In that case, it was really more of a timing issue.
Right.
I really had nowhere else to go from there. I knew that I wanted an MBA at some point, so I view it as now's the time. And to be honest, I graduated high school in 86, junior college in 88, bachelor's in 90. So when 92 rolled around, I was having withdrawal. So I just went back to school.
Something needed to change. Yeah. Which is nice about around here. You just add on a new project. Yeah. You don't ever have to change jobs. You're just like, I'm going to try this today. Yeah. No, and I think that's an important distinction to the advice that Jeff gave, is don't leave just because you have a bad boss. You can leave and have a bad boss. Right. But make sure you're evaluating other situations. I could definitely see people being in a job where they're not advancing and they have a bad boss, and leaving would provide them that advancement. I think there are many times it's very hard in that moment to evaluate all of the factors when this very big central factor is, I have a difficult boss. I think that I imagine that would be very challenging for someone.
Yeah. And I got to do a lot of different kinds of things, but there was no growth. I mean, there was nowhere to go from where I was. And so I think that's great advice, to really think about why you're making a change, and not do anything hastily. Sometimes we make changes because opportunities appear that we had not thought about. Sometimes we're very intentionally making a change for unhappiness, whatever that may look like.
Right. Absolutely. We talked a little bit at the beginning of the show about Dean Jones getting an award and being part of the Reynolds and Reynolds Sales Leadership Institute. Tell us more about the Institute and what its mission is.
So we started the Institute 4 years ago in October. So it's almost our 4th birthday.
Happy birthday.
As really a way to draw students into careers that they didn't know about. So we took a hard look at the marketing undergraduate curriculum. We had quite a few students who, instead of marketing majors, I would call them unaccounting majors. So they changed their major because they found the quantitative courses not fitting them, and that didn't necessarily plug directly into marketing. They just opted out. And so I looked at those transcripts, and they struggled a little bit trying to find their way through the marketing curriculum. They would take global marketing, but they never studied abroad. They'd take sales management, but didn't take professional selling. So there's just no rhyme or reason to how they were choosing their coursework. And so it sort of dawned on me that accounting is so structured and marketing was so unstructured that it was a tough transition. One that should have seemed easier, but it was not. And so we looked at our curriculum and we said, okay, where do we have faculty expertise and where do we know we can place students? And we created tracks, and sales became one of those tracks. Half of our students were going to work in sales anyway. And so we wanted them to more intentionally choose it and then prepare for it. There's tons of jobs, tons of really good jobs in sales. So we had to kind of go on this mission to tell students that what we're talking about in sales is very different than what they think about sales. It's not the used car salesman that gets made fun of in the movies. It's not the retail sales clerk at Best Buy who's trying to sell them a warranty they don't want. They have never been professional buyers, so they have never dealt with professional salespeople. And so we wanted to create a program that would train them for the workforce, but also help them see the careers. So our first step was really to get the curriculum in line and to get some partner companies on board. Partner companies give us money to do programming, but they also give us logos to put on a wall so that students go, oh, that's what sales looks like, okay? And so their involvement in our classes and our role play activities and our contest give students an idea of what the jobs really are. So that partner involvement was important for many, many reasons. And so Reynolds and Reynolds was our first partner. They wrote us the first check to get us started. And then quickly several others came on.
They got a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it got a little bit bigger. So my goal was to first get our house in order for our students and then to build on that. So the first thing we did was the curriculum. Second thing we did was the extracurricular pieces. And then now we're kind of on more of an outreach mission around the university. So my goal was to be a named, recognized center within 5 years, and we did it in 3.5. Thanks to Reynolds and Reynolds.
Well, I mean, and you, but
but it was huge to have the financial backing, because what the named endowment gift allows us is to have staff on permanent money, which is huge, because when the leadership of the program are really kind of part-time people who have real jobs, it's hard to get a lot done without some staff. And so we kind of, Andrew Loring and I kicked this off kind of by ourselves with as part-time, 10-hour-a-week student worker, and then, have grown it to having 2 full-time staff, 3 graduate assistants, 2 student workers, plus we run the tours, so we have a whole nother group for that. So, I mean, it's grown quite significantly in our programming. And so our mission now is kind of to elevate the profession. So we believe 2 things very strongly, that sales skills are life skills. Everybody will benefit from developing some sales skills while they're in college. So whether they think they're ever going to hold the title sales representative, whatever, they're going to be selling. They're going to be selling ideas. They're going to be selling themselves for promotions. They're going to be selling their teams for recognitions. I ask accounting students all the time, how many of you would like to be a partner in an accounting firm? Guess what they do? They sell. They get new business.
90% of the time.
So, if you have partner in your title, law firm, consulting firm, accounting firm, whatever you sell. And so this is the place to safely develop those skills, to get good at it, to practice it, to fail. And so we want everybody to understand that the sales skills are life skills. We also want people to understand that sales careers are great options for a lot of people. There are a lot of people on this campus who really ought to consider it. May not be right for them, but they ought to consider it. They ought to look at what professional sales is. If you have a pay-for-performance mentality, if you have great work ethic, if you have good perseverance, I mean, it's really a great career option. To be good at sales, at the front line, you have to know the company's products, the customers, the competitors. And so you have this unique view of what the market really is. Of 24% of Fortune 500 CEOs came through the sales ranks because of that unique perspective they get working at that front line like that. And so we just want, it's not for everybody.
Sure.
Everybody needs the skills. The career's not for everybody, but there are a lot of people who ought to think about it.
My dad's in sales. It's near and dear to my heart. I always say, though, he sold us on everything. Like, this movie. I want y'all to watch this movie with me. It's the best movie in the world. You're going to love it. You're going to love this part. And my sister and I were like, yeah, okay, we'll watch this movie with you every time. And I swear it was almost never good just because of his taste. And we still fell for it. I was like, how are you selling it? I mean, even still, you get me. But passion. And identifying my need.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the movies rarely met my needs, but he knew what I wanted in that movie.
And that's the key that we try to tell. I mean, sales is problem solving.
Right.
Yes, there are items that are sold that we don't need. I mean, you could argue that I don't really need 4 pair of black pants, right? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
But in services, we buy things because we can't do them or don't want to do them. In business to business, you don't buy stuff you don't need.
Right.
Everything that's bought that a business buys, somebody needed for some reason, or it wouldn't have been. You don't spend your business money on things that aren't. And so what you have to understand is selling is not manipulation. It is not talking people into stuff they don't need. It is helping them meet their needs.
Right.
The way we teach sales is you get on the same team with the buyer to meet whatever need that they have. It's not about manipulation. And because of the way sales has been portrayed in movies and everything, there is this misperception of that it's a true career. Eli will speak and say, and I've heard him say this many times. First time he said it kind of shocked me because he walked up to the microphone and he said, "I'm fed up." And I went, "That's not what you're supposed to be saying, Eli."
Stay on your notes, buddy.
But then he went on to say that he's fed up with people not valuing that it's a true profession, that there is both an art and a science to being a good salesperson. There are skills involved. And salespeople aren't, necessarily gifted with talking too much. The best salespeople are gifted with listening.
Yeah, that's important. That was the shift for me that was really useful. As you know, Dean Jones did a sales training for our graduate programs unit, and you were involved in that. And it was really helpful for me to think differently about selling. One, to just recognize that I sell every day. I might sell to a prospective student, but I'm selling to current students on this is a good program that we're adding. This is a change we're going to make, and here's why. And I understand you need that, and here's how we can accomplish it. And it is selling all day. I cannot think of a position, especially a higher up position in any organization, company, nonprofit, where you're not having to sell.
Absolutely.
What is one of the big things you're working on for this year? Do you have an idea of, you talked about some of the projects with engineering, but is there a dream to accomplish in this year that you're not even sure you might accomplish, but what is that?
So there is something we're working on that we're not sure we'll pull off for this year, but we want to create a technical immersion program for business students. So we're working with some engineering faculty now on what that
Yeah.
curriculum would look like, but kind of the same thing as the business immersion program, but it'd be about 56 hours of academic content at a level that would make sense for business students. So they wouldn't come out with an engineering degree, obviously,
Right.
but they learned some engineering vocabulary. The Zachary building, the engineering building, has some of the coolest labs.
That building.
They have this one lab where they teach physics with this thing that looks like a combination between a paper cutter and an air hockey table. And somehow they teach physics with it. I want to learn physics. And
maybe they just have it there to look smart so that when you and I walk in, we're like, yeah, that's cool. What does it do?
they fling this little puck and somehow it shows the curvature, and yeah, it's super cool. So we're working to develop a curriculum like that would give, so students who are interested in technical sales,
Right.
they learn a little bit of vocabulary lesson, or students who want to work in oil and gas might learn. And so that's one thing that we're working on, that we kind of targeting May for, if we can get the curriculum lined up and some funding lined up and some students that might be interested. Because it would be a 2-week program that we do between semesters in May. So that's kind of the big one that we're excited about, that we think has a lot of potential.
That's really cool. I don't know if students would know how valuable that is, but I know you will market it so that they understand that, but that seems so valuable. We have a lot of, especially in our PMBA program, which you and I both teach in that program. In our professional MBA program, we have a lot of students that every year that are in technical sales. And I find those students understand their business better than anyone else in the room.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
It's really interesting. But I'm also always impressed by how much those students have learned and worked to understand the technical aspects. And some of them have engineering backgrounds and made their way to technical sales, but most of them don't.
Right.
They have who knows what major, and they dug into an industry they thought was interesting and learned, especially in the oil and gas industry, learned from oil in the ground to chemicals.
Right.
How the supply chain works and where they are in the process and what needs to happen.
I mean, if you're smart enough and you have good communication skills, you get the problem solving aspect of it. Sometimes, there's some technical sales job that you're going to need a biomedical engineer, to do, right? I mean, there's some, but there are a lot of jobs that business school students with some technical aptitude could absolutely do. And we have a blend of partners. We have some that just want best athlete. They just want good communication skills. They don't care what their undergraduate major was. We have some that want business school students. We have some that want engineers that we've trained. And so we're trying to, sort of balance all that to meet our partner needs, but also to provide a great value for the students.
Let's jump into our rapid fire questions. What do you consider your most valuable failure?
So I started off as a tenure track assistant professor. And, I had to think about this a lot because I don't really think of it as a failure. I think it is an opportunity to change directions. But I did not meet the research standards to be a tenured professor here at A&M. And so I left for a year and had the opportunity to then, and I could have made tenure where I was, but I made the choice because I saw the opportunity to do more in teaching and service, which is where I had more. I liked research, and I did some research, and I have published, and I've had a few best paper awards, just not at the level that A&M expects. And I see value in all of that, but I found that I think I can make a bigger contribution to A&M through teaching and through service and administration. So I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to come back and really develop in those areas. And so, failure to not meet the tenure standard. I never went up for tenure here. I left before that, but the failure to meet that specific bar led me to somewhere where I think I'm probably more valuable to the institution, and certainly feel very fulfilled in that role.
Absolutely. I think of you as one of the MVPs of Mays. And I mean, and because you're not as focused on the research side of things. It frees you up to do the things that you're passionate about. So it's consistent with what we've talked about with following your passion,
Mhm.
and that Mays needs that some of our research faculty are not equipped to do. It's just not where they would best serve Mays either. So it really is nice that this is a place where you can align your skills and your passions. And
And with the way academia has changed over time, it's hard to have someone that can do all of it.
right,
The teaching,
is.
research, and service. And so it's nice to be at an institution that gets that and that allows us to have this. So over, if you look at the whole faculty, we get it all done. But it's hard to imagine a scenario where any one person could do teaching, research, and service at a high level.
To the
So we've
fullest,
got a
right.
balance.
What do you think is people's biggest misconception of you?
So when Hannah Cole first got here as my advisor, I told her she's phenomenal. I told her that I said, students will come and talk to you about faculty. I said, you don't need to tell me unless it's something I really need to know. I mean, if it's just them venting, that's fine. But if there's something going on, in the class and I need to know about it. And I said, so here's what they'll tell you about me. I said, they will tell you that I'm intimidating unless they've been in my office and talked to me. When I said that, she immediately started laughing. And I said, what? And she said, there were two girls in here this morning. And one of them said, Dr. Parish is so intimidating. I just don't even want to talk to her. And the other girl said, she is not. Go visit her in her office. And so I think in the class, particularly when I was teaching the large class, when you're teaching a large class, you have to run it very strict and structured. And so I think a lot of students sort of felt like I was intimidating. And I can be a strong personality. I try to sit back sometimes, but sometimes I'm definitely willing to jump in and get the work done. And sometimes that I need to be careful about that. I need to be careful about letting other people have opportunities, because I do know I've tried to learn on more positive phrasing. I've tried to stop calling myself nosy and call myself curious.
Sure.
But I do have a tendency to get in a lot of things, and part of that is drawing on my strength. Maximizer is one of my strengths, and so I find myself. So maximizer is why I end up with a lot to do.
Right.
Achiever is why I can get a lot done. Yeah. So it works out pretty well sometimes. But the intimidation thing is definitely something. I don't think adults would ever say that, but I think students have said that for sure. And that's something I want to work on, because I definitely want to be approachable, because I do want to help people find their passion and purpose.
Well, we've talked about this on the show before. It's been an interesting research project because we've asked everyone that question. And I've said this on the show before, but I'm going to say it again. Overwhelmingly, I'd say roughly 90%, have to go back and count, but I'd say roughly 90% of the women have said an answer almost identical to that. Intimidating, mean, whatever the word you want to say is, cold. And a lot of the men have said that all I do is work. That the misconception is that I'm this person at work and that's who I am, and I don't have these other things going on. And I think it's really interesting. In the intimidation one, maybe I would say bothers me, but it's very interesting to me, especially for our students who maybe have not yet seen strong women in the workplace, who don't have that model, who have a more singular view of who women are and haven't seen women like you and I and Cindy Donnell and Cindy Devers and Marty Lauder and all the ones that we've had on the show that have said that same comment. They haven't seen that yet. And, when you ask anyone, kids or adults, to draw a picture of a CEO, they almost all draw a man. It's like high 90%. And that would be one thing I would love to change about the perception of women in the workplace. My sister, this weekend, like I said, we were working on a project, and this woman who I had never met was helping us with something, and she walked in and she and my sister were laughing, and I was like, what's so funny? And they said, well, Kristen's talked a lot about you. My sister, she's told me a lot about you, and my perception of you was basically the woman in The Devil Wears Prada. Real. She was like sharp bob haircut, glasses, rocking a nice pantsuit, like just buttoned up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she said immediately when I walked in, you're wearing yoga pants, you're joking around, you're just, I knew that we were going to get along and it wasn't going to be that militant woman. And my sister later said, I've really got to think about what I said about you that would have painted that picture in her head. And I said, I'm not sure that's the issue. I think the picture is in her head no matter what. And the things that you would say about me naturally, the things that I am, that's what you associate that with.
Well, you have to think about how long our history is, right?
Sure.
And why, why it is that way. And it's going to take time, but I think we're doing all the right things.
Oh, for sure.
So it's just going to take some time.
And I'm not complaining about it per se. But I do think it's an important thing to continue to draw attention to and show a different.
It's such a hard thing. So in marketing, we look for differences so that we can understand values and then deliver to that. So we talk about millennials versus Gen Z, and we talk about gender differences, and we talk about even religious differences because we're looking to understand values of a certain group of people because we're not very good at predicting individual behavior, but the more we can understand about the values of the group. So it's very interesting. And, from a marketing standpoint, we're looking for differences. And then in the rest of the world, we're trying to not see differences, treat everybody the same. And so it's kind of an interesting, situation to be in. But it's interesting that the more we point out differences, the harder it gets to treat everybody the same. And we have a generation now that, kind of really doesn't see color anymore. And we see, so.
Which is actually, there's a great article. I'll have to get the exact title, but it basically is the colorblindness is not benign. I think that's roughly the title. And how trying to pretend everyone is the same or should be treated the same is incredibly harmful because
absolutely
that history of the way that society created the history of the way that society created barriers for people of color, especially, I'll use that example, the way that society created barriers, even, the lack of loan funding for a home, and just, I'm not even going back to some of the more egregious issues, just the seemingly smaller things that had such a big impact. It's not fair. It's not right to say everyone is the same. Let's pretend like there's no differences. It's also not, hey, let's hang our hat on these stereotypes of these groups. And that is a tough tension.
The thing is, we've got to look at differences differently.
Right.
So it's not about gender differences or race differences. It's about people and where they are in life, where they are in their socioeconomic status, and what are the things that we can do to give equal opportunity for people to do the things that they're going to be where they're going to be most successful. That goes back to the education example. Not everyone needs to come to A&M. Not everyone needs to go to college. Not everyone needs to feel like that is the bar for success. And so, so I think we have to look at differences in a different way.
Did call these rapid fire? We're not very rapid.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I did it. But we'll jump into these a little more on the rapid fire. So if you could have anyone as a mentor for one day, who would it be?
So probably someone very different from me. So I thought about, maybe the first ever neurosurgeon or Beethoven, somebody real different. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of great mentors with Lynn and with Eli and with many others, but something real different.
I agree. What's the most important piece of business advice or career advice that our listeners have never or rarely heard before?
I'll share some advice that I was told very early in my career that I don't hear talked about a lot, but I think is important. And that's don't be afraid to hire help, whether that's at home or at work. Don't be afraid to use your income to hire assistants. So whether that's somebody to do your laundry, whether that's, TAs, I mean, whatever that might be, you don't have to do everything, and you've got to really think about what's the best use of your time. And so that's something that's kind of always stuck with me. And so there have been times, and you want to be careful at home what kinds of things you choose to outsource. Some people outsource parenting, which is I did hire a tutor for my son at one point because it was not quality time we were spending together trying to do homework. So I think that's probably one of the best piece of advice I ever got that I have tried to use from time to time is to hire help when you need it.
I think in my Marketing 321 class, I'm pretty sure it was Dwayne DeWald who said, come up with a dollar value for your time. And if you are going to drive to 10 gas stations to save 20 cents a gallon, think about how much you lost driving around doing that, or debating between these two products that are 30 cents different.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. And in thinking about when is it time for me to hire someone? And it's that if I can hire them and still make a profit in that hour, that's a time when I need to think about hiring someone.
There's a book by Rory Vaden.
Okay.
And we actually had Rory here. He's written a couple of books. He actually came and spoke in 321 a few years ago.
Oh, cool.
His first book was called Take the Stairs. And the metaphor is take the stairs to the elevator. Pay your dues now. It'll pay off later. His other book is called Procrastinate on Purpose.
You've told me about this one. Yeah.
It's a great book, and it's really all about making decisions about when to delegate. If it has to be perfect, then you ought to do it. If it doesn't have to be perfect, then maybe someone else can do it. And then the other question is when. So he talks about change cost, doing things too early and then having to redo them and redo them and redo them. And that's what I've really had to learn is, what's due next? Some things can wait. There's a temptation to go ahead and do it now because I have a block of time. I'll do it now, but then I have to change it 8 times because of all these other factors I couldn't control. But that really thinking about, when to invest your own time. And part of it is about the value of your time, but part of it is also the importance of the work you're doing.
Absolutely.
And really making that decision about when to invest your time.
Absolutely. What is your fondest memory of Texas A&M?
So I love all the traditions. This is an interesting. So when I came here to interview, my first reaction was, I do not want to go to work here. I want to go to school here. I want to be a student. I want to ring. I want to do all this. And so I literally over the past few years have been looking, there's this online master's program I can do and get a ring, But in August of 2017, when we were recruiting, we were at the AMA, the American Marketing Association conference, and I was explaining how fabulous it is. It's like this light bulb went off over my head, and I am an Aggie. I am an Aggie now. I didn't go to school here. I don't have a ring, but I live and breathe this place more than students who go to school here for 4 years do. So that was a very cool moment for me to just right in that moment as I'm describing the Aggie core values and how, our department just loves each other and we're truly like family. And wow, I am an Aggie. I am truly an Aggie now.
I guess send some good bull to my nephew. This weekend we were together and his dad was trying to convince him to go. He's 9, so he has some time. But his dad was trying to convince him to go to UNT, which is his alma mater. And without any prompting from me, Turner said, "Dad, I bleed maroon." And I was like, we've succeeded at 9 years old. We did it. But then we asked him why, and he said, because of the rec center. and Troy was like, well, that's why colleges spend so much money on a rec centers, because it draws in a 9-year-old. We took him rock climbing. He was like, they got rock climbing and racquetball. He was also on the Jumbotron at a game in the fall, and that I thought that was what sealed the deal. He was dancing. Some undergrad that was amazing. He was actually a business major. Just grabbed him up from the stands because he wanted to be on the Jumbotron too. And he's like, this cute kid will get me on. And they were just dancing and he was throwing them around in the air. And it was really cute. So like I just did, we end each session with Good Bull. This is an opportunity to recognize someone else for something good or great they have done. Do you have someone you would like to send Good Bull?
Oh, so Hannah Cole.
Yeah.
So Hannah has worked for me for almost 4 years now, 4.5 years now.
I'll steal her too.
Well, she's leaving.
Oh.
So she's finishing her master's. I was able to be part of her oral comps.
Wow.
I wanted to fail her so she couldn't leave, and her committee wouldn't let me.
Okay.
But she is actually leaving in early January. And I'm so proud of what she's done. She's just phenomenal. But she is leaving and taking a year to travel the world and wants to land in Germany and work there for a while in an educational capacity, to study abroad and traveling abroad and cultural awareness and all those things are really, really important to her. And so I think then eventually she'll come back to the U.S. and probably work in a study abroad program or something like that. So just her bravery to, her one of her goals in life was to see the 7 wonders of the world before she was 30, and she did it at 26. So she will just get on a plane and fly somewhere and not know a soul and not have a reservation and just make it work. She's so brave. But the fact that she cares so much about these cultural issues, I'm super proud of what a great employee she's been and her bravery and what this next phase of life is going to be for her, even though I'm devastated that she's leaving.
Good Bull to Hannah Cole, and congratulations on this next endeavor. I hope we can follow you on social media and hear all about it, Hannah. Thanks, Janet, for being on the show. We were honored to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to stay up to date on our latest videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. If you're in a rush or on the road, you can still join us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. If you want to learn more about us or our guests, please visit our website at mays.tamu.edu/podcasts. Also, please check out Mays Business School's academic programs. They're the sponsors of our show, and you can find them in the description. Thanks, and gig 'em.